Today is Thursday, May the 8th, and it seems I'm getting a little bit of grief for some of my opinions with, in particular, baby boomers who think I'm crazy, which is funny because I just think they have Trump derangement syndrome. But actually, not just boomers. Actually, there's a couple of my folks in my family that um, I think feel like I'm out in space somewhere. And so today, I just want to talk about a few things to help kind of frame the context in which I look at the world, the context in which I look at Canada as a country, and kind of the underpinning reasons why I have incorporated a company in the US, opened a bank account in the US, am working towards an E2 visa in the US, as well as exploring maybe a digital nomad visa in Spain. And that might be a new piece of information for you. But I just want to talk about like three things. Okay. So here's the deal. I'm Gen X. My global opinion is that I think the baby boomers really wrecked it for everybody. And I don't mean that to be mean or to be diminutive, but they were the first generation in history to never have to go to war. They were never commanded or demanded by their government to go and fight. And they were the first generation that really didn't have incredible economic or political hardships. They came off the 60s. There was a great boom in all sorts of things, which I don't need to get into. But this generation just rode an amazing wave of prosperity, certainly in North America. And as a Gen X, I was in that shadow, so I got to see it. Um, you know, the it's very simple things like how much money could you make at a job and how far could that money stretch. And I think it's fair to say that if you go a couple generations down, so you go baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, you'll find that those dynamics really aren't the same. And there might be some boomers that roll their eyes at that. And that's fine. A lot of the boomers I know have no intention of trying to use their wealth to help the next generation. And if not, maybe Gen X, then even Gen Z. Like a lot of baby boomers have an air of entitlement to them, that they're entitled to pension benefits, they're entitled to great health care, they're entitled to spend their money as they see fit. And you know what? They're right. But what it produces, of course, are opinions like maybe the one I have, um, where there could have been a better job done. And so instead of that being a philosophical conversation, I just wanted to give some data points, and I might be conflating them. I don't know, but this is how I view the world. And so when you consume my content or my opinion or my vlogs, this is what you're up against. So I'm just going to give you three things. Okay. What I wanted to compare was I just wanted to explain the difference between working in the public sector and the private sector, because I'm an entrepreneur, which means that I am in the private sector running a business, and a public sector would be government jobs or jobs that are funded by taxpayer dollars because the government doesn't make money per se. They simply tax people and then they do the best that they can to try and use that revenue to pay for expenses based on the causes and the commitments that politicians have made. So at the bottom of the economy, you've got the private sector, folks like me, who are trying to create employment opportunities for people, and that goes all the way up to publicly traded companies. And then you've got the public sector, which are government employees. So that's the first thing I look at. I just want to talk about public versus private sector employment. The next thing that I want to talk about is I want to discuss what the productivity rates are. So when you look at a country, or say I look at my business and I go, okay, we made $1 million. How many hours did it take to make that $1 million? And hopefully, if we make $1 million next year, that our cost per hour doesn't go up, it goes down, and therefore we're more productive. So it's a pretty simple equation, but it also works for a country. So when you look at all of the productivity happening in the country, is productivity going up, meaning we are getting a better result for the same amount of inputs, or are we getting a worse result? So private sector versus public sector employment, who works for the government versus who is working in the private sector? Because if you work in the government, you're not contributing to the revenue, you're just an expense. You work in the private sector, you are contributing to revenue, and hopefully the expenses you're trusting are being managed well by the government. Then the second thing is the ability to say, how productive are we as a country? And then the very, very last thing is cost of living. I just thought that between those three things, I think it highlights my point. And of course, I'm the one putting this information out, but I would encourage you to check it for yourself. So let's just start with the very, 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 very basic one. How many people work for the government? How many people don't? In the United States, much like in Spain, about 85% of the populace, of the working people in the countries of the United States and Spain, work for the private sector. That means they work in private enterprise. And if you look from 2000, what did I do this over here? 2006 to 2023, it's been pretty consistent. Pretty consistent. There has been a small change in Spain. A small percentage of the populace has gone from the public sector or private sector rather into the public sector. And in the United States, it's actually changed dramatically. It went from anyway, so the numbers don't matter. But in Canada, which is where I am, which is the only one I'm concerned about, in 2006, you had 83% of the population working in the private sector. In 2023, you had 79% of the population working in the private sector. So that's a drop of like 4%. And you're like, yeah, but so what? It's 4%. What's the big deal? Well, that 4% slid over to the public sector. So they went to work for the government. They said, I don't want to work for a company. I want to go work for the government. 4% of Canadians did that transition, roughly. But when you compare it to the United States over the same period of time, you had a shift going the opposite way. You had 4% of people leave the public sector and go to the private sector. So in the United States, it went the other way. They said, I don't want to work for the government. I want to go work in private enterprise. And in Spain, it kind of roughly stayed the same. There wasn't a lot of shifting happening. So in Canada, more people went to work for the government. In the United States, less people went to work for the government. And in Spain, it stayed about the same. Okay. So let's just park that idea for a minute that for some reason, more Canadians felt like they had to go get a job with the government instead of working in private enterprise. That's where I work every day and have for my entire career. Okay, point number one. Point number two is the productivity. Okay, so that means how much growth was there in the United States between in the year 2006? There's about productivity growth of like 1.5%. So every year, 1.5%, the country was growing. In 2023, that number was 1.3%. So kind of roughly about the same. 1.5%. The country was growing every year. Okay. In Spain, growth was like just a touch less than 1%. That was in 2006. In 2023, growth was 1%. So what does that mean? That means like roughly Spain just stayed the same, right? So the United States grew a little bit between 2006 2023. Spain kind of stayed the same 2006 to 2023. But in Canada, productivity dropped. And if you've listened to the headlines, you can see the frustration that comes out of individuals like me who see more people going to work for the government and then productivity dropping. And it went from about 1%, so the country was trailing the United States, but Canada was still growing, to about 0.47%. So less than half a percentage point of growth, which is like virtually no growth. So what happens is you get all these folks going over to the government, you have less productivity. So, what does that ultimately mean? That means if you listen to my very first episodes, there's like this slow descent into something great being less great. And Canada certainly is on its way down. And so, if you then layer in the fact that in Canada, folks have left private enterprise, they've left the private sector to go work for the government because they probably feel safer there, or there's just better benefits there, or it's easier. I don't know. There's probably a whole bunch of reasons for that. While that shift is happening, the productivity level of Canada has dropped. So we have stopped being as productive as we have been in the past. And then lastly, when you look at the cost of living changes, you can see that across the board, the cost of living has just gone up. It's gone up in the United States, it's gone up in Canada, and it's gone up in Spain. So in both Canada and Spain, or sorry, let me talk about the US first. In the US, you have the cost of living going up, but you have more people going into private enterprise and leaving the government. And as a result of that, you have increased productivity. So if you kind of just look way back from at the United States, you can kind of go, I think everything's going to work out. Less people are being a drain on the system by working in public enterprise. They're going into private enterprise where revenue is created for the country, tax revenue is created. You have more productivity, so the country just overall is doing better. And yes, the cost of living is rising, but that's probably got something to do with the first two things. If people are more productive and they're earning more money, then they're probably spending it more. So that pushes the cost of goods up. So again, I don't want to get into Trump derangement syndrome or tariffs or anything like that. I'm just trying to give you like a global look. Then you look at Spain and you sort of say to yourself, okay, cost of living in Spain has gone up, but for the most part, the populace has stayed the same. The people that work in government are staying in those jobs, and that's probably because they're probably pretty good jobs with pensions and so forth. The cost, while it has gone up, the productivity level for Spain has also gone up. So you can kind of look at the cost of living and productivity and go, generally, Spain's probably like for the most part pretty mediocre, but they're kind of slowly moving in the right direction. But with Canada, you have the cost of living going up. You have more people working in the public sector where value is not created, money's just spent there. That means there's no one in the public sector creating money for Canada. And people are leaving the private sector. And then you have productivity going down. So all the guff I'm getting from the people I know, these are the reasons why I'm of the opinion that Canada is not the best place right now for a 47-year-old with a young family who are all trying to start lives for themselves to be here. Now, if all of my children were working in the public sector, firemen, policemen, nurses, doctors, government politicians, then Canada is a really great place to be because for the foreseeable future, it looks like all of the public service jobs are going to continue to grow. People are going to fly to those public jobs because they're going to feel that they're more secure and safe than working in a private enterprise. And then I would just stay put and I would just go vacation somewhere. But the truth is, I don't have a family right now that's going to work in the public sector. In fact, most of them are all going to work in the private sector. And so Canada seems to be the worst place to be working in the private sector right now. And certainly, if you're a young person, what that means, all jokes aside, is not only can unlike the boomers, you cannot get a job now that will pay for your cost of living, which is going up, but you also just can't begin to acquire wealth. There's no point buying a house because if in the boomers' day and age, a house was 2 times your annual income. When I was growing up, it was like 5, 6 times, and now we're approaching 8 or 9 times for Gen Z. So Canada just is in a really, really tough place. And you might have missed it in previous episodes, but I shared this thought that I feel like Spain is on the other side of where Canada is. And it's easier to, I think, start again when you've hit the bottom and begin building up than it is to start at an entry point like Canada and just watch it decline. Because I do believe the decline, I think factually, if you just looked at the stats, is uh, irrefutable. You can't argue that Canada is not on the decline. There's nothing working in Canada's favor right now to support the idea that innovative, creative people should be here doing anything. In fact, you should leave and go somewhere else because there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. Canada's not on a global stage. You don't really hear about a lot of companies saying, I want to come invest in Canada in the private enterprise. They're not doing that. They're going to the US. Europe is now kind of on the leading edge because they got to start figuring out how they're going to correct the decisions that the EU has made. And so I thought today, Thursday, May the 8th, that for all the guff I'm getting from the people I know, if you're willing to have an actual conversation about it, then I think those are the things that you got to be looking at. What are younger people capable of doing in the country? Where are their best opportunities? And what will their life look like if the next decade looks like the last decade? And I happen to think that I just have an opinion. that if private enterprise is where you're going to be, that it's great to have a business as we do here in Calgary, but to really stretch and work and risk a bunch doesn't seem to be worth it. Make your business profitable, make it healthy, try to make it as stable as you can, but recognize that the folks that are working for you are always going to have this burden. There's always going to be more attractive opportunities in the public sector because Canada right now is heavily leaning in a public sector best opportunity basis. And then that doesn't even begin to include kind of all the bureaucratic and administrative and all, kind of all the just the stuff, the muck in the machinery that goes along with trying to do something interesting in Canada. So for all the people that just don't see that, hey, I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a business owner, and those are the things that on a mathematical basis matter to me. With respect to tariffs and Trudeau and Trump derangement syndrome and all those sorts of things, I think that's just noise. Politicians come, politicians go. But at the heart of a country are the people that get up every day to try and create some value. And those people that create value pay taxes. Those taxes go up to a government. A government has to be able to manage those taxes in a way that it provides for what the people are looking for. And I think what's happened in Canada now, and you've seen it over the last bunch of years, is that people are saying, look, I would love to pay more taxes. I would love to do all those sorts of things. But I just don't see that the government is making smart choices. Productivity is down. Public employment is up. Cost of living is up. Clearly, the government's not able to manage its house any better than maybe I can. And if I'm the one doing the work and generating the revenue, maybe I should do it somewhere else where there might be a better chance that it makes a bigger impact. So, just some food for thought. I know this is a little exhaustive, but I feel real strongly about it. And most of the folks that I interact with, if they're not my pals who own businesses, that's generally the same shared opinion that I have. But for folks that either have a job or work in the public sector, a lot of this stuff just doesn't matter because it's not how their life is shaped. It's not the criteria by which they get up every day and do their job. It's just a very different context. And so hopefully today you're able just to learn a little bit more about why what is the math or what are the facts that support where my opinion might be coming from. And not that I think America is a magic bullet, I just think there's a better opportunity there. And not that I think Spain is a magic bullet, but it seems like the damage and carnage has already been digested by that country, and now they're trying to rebuild. And Canada, I just see is just about to get into a world of hurt and all the best. So obviously, if today was do I stay or do I go, there's no question today is a go day.